I'm Clive Mather, former head of Shell Canada. Climate security is important to all of us, to governments, to business and to individuals. Certainly the business community in Canada is now taking this issue very seriously. The recent Business of Climate Change conference in Ottawa brought together corporate leaders who recognise that this is both a critical environmental challenge and a significant economic opportunity. Phil Clapp noted that climate change represents a fundamental shift for business in the United States.
This is no longer an environmental issue that is going to end up being relegated to the back. This is a fundamental economic decision about how our economies, both in the developed and the developing world, go over the next 50 years.
Former Federal Commissioner of the Environment, Joanne Jelena, also noted the shift among companies.
Reality is that climate change is driving a global industry restructuration toward a low-carbon economy, and those of us who are not getting into that area of trying to address climate change in a different way than just reducing greenhouse gases to comply with regulation will miss a lot of opportunity.
Despite the recent surge in clean tech and venture capital, Vicky Sharp says there is still strong potential for further investment.
We would all want to be in a position where Canada is exporting technology solutions to Asia and not the other way around.
Martin Nesbitt of the UK's Department of Environment says climate security is no longer just an environmental issue. It's become an economic one.
Clearly, action in the EU and in the UK is driven in part by the environmental concern, but it's driven fundamentally by the realization that tackling climate change and tackling climate change now is about securing the economic future of our economies.
New opportunities for business are starting to emerge, explains Dennis Mahoney.
This is a fundamental economic shift, and with fundamental economic shifts, there are winners and losers. There are those who adapt and those who aren't able to adapt. We are looking at a tremendous number of opportunities if we approach them in the right way.
Another lawyer, Lisa DeMarco, who recently ranked as one of the top 10 climate change lawyers by Chamber Global, says climate change has become an urgent issue for business.
Climate change is now, currently, imminently, a critical financial issue for each of you to consider in your daily business obligations, and Canadians have some catch-up to do on the investment side.
Scott Harrison notes that attitudes are changing among investors.
But what we're finding now is the attitudes are so different that the investors, these hardened Wall Street guys, are using those terms. They're using global warming and they're using climate change. And so the attitude is incredibly different, and I think it really means that the environment is ripe for action and opportunity.
For those who still hesitate, Julie Desjardins warns that investors are pressing for better disclosure from all companies.
If you're a supplier to Walmart, if you're in the oil and gas industry, if you're a company looking for good access to capital markets, if you're a company doing business in an area of severe weather or other events, climate change is material.
The forestry industry used the conference to announce its goal to become carbon neutral by 2015, which Avrim Lazar says is a strategic move.
We decided, yeah, we'll have to cope with what regulation comes, but we're not going to try and get ahead of the regulatory curve. We're going to try and get ahead of the market curve.
And Keith Trent adds, there is no point in waiting.
I would say to you that if we take a wait-and-see approach, we're always going to be waiting for something and we're never going to take action. And so I think that's the wrong approach to take here, and it's going to lead to a path to nowhere. If we're going to meet this challenge, and I think we have to, we've got to act now, and we've got to take a lead role in that.
It was my pleasure to deliver the closing keynote address at this important conference. After my years in the Alberta oil patch with Shell Canada, I remain optimistic that climate change represents an opportunity. With sound public policy, we can develop a business case that will stimulate investment. The result will be technology advances that will not only improve operations, but also grow exports. The world needs Canadian technology to meet its environmental challenges. But the clock is ticking, and that challenge is only growing. Whether as individuals or businesses, we must live up to our values and take concerted action now. The Business of Climate Change conference showed that corporate leaders in Canada now realize that it is indeed time to act.